firm a few years ago discussing how satellite technology had revolutionized his delivery and tracking processes and his personnel management procedures. Before that, he viewed technology in trucking as being focused on better trucks and more efficient distribution centers. What is the impact of the social and economic climate in the locations you serve? This is particularly important as you seek to move into new countries or developing countries where markets can be less stable. Regulatory environments can play significant roles in creating new opportunities for businesses or virtually destroying businesses. Close attention should be paid to regulatory trends and the impacts they have on your products, services, and operations. Competition is always present. What are your competitors' visions and strategies? What are their plans? A great deal of information is available to you legally. The Internet has exploded the amount of competitive information available to you. But frequently your best source is your customers and your frontline people. You want to examine what are your suppliers doing. Many times your ability to compete effectively is linked to your suppliers' capabilities. Learning their strategies and including them in your strategic planning can influence their strategic direction and delivery capability. Global pressures are affecting today's markets. One should consider international influences. These take on several faces. First, if you are a local business with the intention of remaining local, someone may offer to market your products internationally. On the other hand, it is likely that you have an international competitor somewhere. You should consider what is happening in the financial world. What is the projected macroeconomic view, and how will it affect your business? How will the availability of financing locally and internationally affect your ability to compete? What investment opportunities are available to you in the projected time frame? All of these aspects should be included in your external assessment. With the vision and the above information as a backdrop, the next phase is the process of making strategic decisions around the key business components. Various techniques can be used, but as a ground rule, always include those who have to execute the strategies in the decision-making process. Keep them short and clear, and don't overcomplicate the process. A few pages of information is better than volumes. The overriding principle remains: each strategy should directly support the achievement of your vision. A critical business component is your communications process. These should be viewed in two ways. First, what are the communication vehicles that you use to communicate within your organization? And recall that besides written and spoken communications, the unspoken message is powerful. Secondly, any process that is changed to meet a strategy communicates a message. So thoughtful strategy development always includes communications, messages that align with the vision. We started this segment with the assumption that you wanted to create a sustainable, great business. To do so requires a shared vision, strategies, and tactics. But implementation can be directly related to the organization's openness to change and its ability to change, or the current organizational culture. The factor of organizational culture is powerful, as we discussed during last year's program. But if vision is to become reality, the spirit of the organization must be nurtured and balanced with process and structural needs. After a break for questions, my colleague Stewart Emery will build on these aspects of implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Let's begin the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call, and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which now appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first call is from la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, la Facultad de Estudios Superiores en Cuautitlán, el Estado de México en México.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. No se escucha, hay interferencia. There is a lot of interference. Le vamos a pedir que repita, por favor, y no se escucha. No se escucha porque hay mucho ruido. Sorry, I can't hear a thing with the...
Algo muy importante para el personal que ahí trabaja, formando su peculiar manera de ver y sentir las cosas.
The interpreter apologizes. There is no way we can hear this. No se escucha la pregunta. Aló, México, México, la pregunta no se escucha, hay mucha interferencia. No hemos escuchado su pregunta. ¿Podría repetir? There is this awful sound.
We have another call while we try to reestablish communication with Mexico from el Instituto Tecnológico de Chilpancingo, en el estado de Guerrero, en México.
Sí, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Un saludo
Good
aquí
morning.
a todos los,
Greetings to all of you from
La
here
pregunta versa más que nada
in Chilpancingo. Our question is the
¿En qué
following.
lugares,
Where
empresas
do
o instituciones
organizations or institutions
se instruyen a los evaluadores?
give instruction to external evaluators? Where are external evaluations, where do they receive training?
Mr. Hoffman?
Okay. With reference to picking up information or getting evaluations of marketplace, there are quite a few sources. One is obviously the internet today. Two are many of the government agencies provide information where you can get market research, statistics on what is going on financially around the world, what's going on within states or communities within countries. And so there's lots of information available there. And there are many research houses as well. With reference to training to understand them, generally speaking, many of the universities, the business schools, do have curricula associated with understanding how to read and interpret the information so that it becomes something that, in fact, you can translate and use as you formulate your strategies and apply it to your business.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from el Instituto Tecnológico de Cerro Azul en el estado de Veracruz, en México.
Bueno,
Buenos días.
sí, por el momento aún no hay preguntas.
We don't have a question, thank you.
Gracias.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Our next question is from the Panama Canal Commission in Panama.
Yeah, good afternoon. We have no questions. Thank you. Hello.
Aló, buenos días. Aló,
Yes, I have a question.
tengo una pregunta.
How many people in the organization should participate in developing a vision?
Mr. Hoffman.
Actually, the vision can be developed, as I suggested, by the leadership, but it also needs to take into account sort of the brain trust that exists within the organization. And so how many people should be involved? I think as the vision is articulated, that we ought to each, as leaders, listen carefully to the responses that we receive from the people, so that as we can gather that information, it may give us new insights, number one, as to how we can articulate the vision more clearly, and based on the information, maybe modify what the initial statement was or what our initial vision was that we had articulated to the group. So it becomes this process of conversation, of putting the idea out, engaging the people, but ultimately the responsibility lies with the leader. The leadership has to and does own the responsibility for articulating the vision and communicating it in a way which engages the entire organization.
Our next question is from la Universidad del Caribe en Santo Domingo, en la República Dominicana.
Aló, adelante.
Our next call will come in from la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, la Facultad de Medicina, Veterinaria y Zootécnica en el Distrito Federal en México.
Muy buenos días.
Morning.
Nuestra pregunta es la
Our
siguiente.
question is the following.
¿Qué se hace
What do you
cuando
do
personas
when
con poder de
people who
decisión
have the
de
decision
una
power
institución
in an organization have participated in defining the vision of the organization and the mission and the values of the organization, and yet they act ignoring all those factors and only attend to their political and personal interests? Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman.
That's always a very difficult situation. And it happens very frequently, so it's not an isolated case maybe in your experience. The leadership has to come to agreement and concurrence. And in our business, we'd call that to get their condition of mind around what it is they're attempting to accomplish so that they have consensus. Now, I know that people go off and do that and they return, but what it suggests is that they really do not have the intention of changing or the intention of committing to what the vision is they've articulated. And really, when it comes down to the intention, we can encourage them to follow the intention of what they were attempting to do. And actually, within organizations, and I've experienced this myself, you can take a group that takes the vision and starts living it and living the values and become a model for the rest of the organization, as well as the leaders. That's not an easy task, but it can be done. So I would encourage you to do that if the leaders aren't following, as well as feedback. Behaviors will not change unless people receive feedback. And I would encourage you to give the leaders feedback around that too. Now there's a risk involved in that, and I know that Mr. Emery is going to be addressing some of that in the second segment.
Our next call is from KTV Comunicaciones in Rio de Janeiro, in Brasil.
Muy buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
¿Cómo hacer para que
What can we do
un pequeño empresario
for
pueda
a small
desarrollar
entrepreneur to be able to
con
develop
eficacia una visión para sus
efficiently and
también
effectively a
pequeños
vision for his
pequeños
also
negocios?
small enterprise?
ya que no hay casi nadie para compartir con él
Since there are
todas las
very few
etapas
people
de
that
este
he
proceso.
can share all these stages of the process with him, because it's a one-man office or it's a small entrepreneur in a small firm.
Mr. Hoffman.
Okay. Good question. Thanks. It's a very good question. Organizations, no matter how small they are, nor how large they are, if they intend to be great, based on the research that Collins and Porce has done, suggest that the process still has to take place. And it's not a process necessarily that needs to be long, overburdening. It can be short and crisp. But each of the principles that were suggested ought to at least be addressed and at least consciously answered within the mind of the entrepreneur if you're by yourself. If you have a smaller group of people, it's actually much easier to communicate and have the interchange and learn from each other so that in fact you can come to an agreement and with clarity on what your vision, your purpose, your core beliefs and values are. So actually that can become easier. But in fact, taking a short amount of time to think about the principles and have a clear image or a clear picture of what you're trying to do will allow you and create the context in which you can take all of the actions and make all of the decisions, no matter how small or large you are.
Thank you. Our next question is from la Universidad Espíritu Santo in Guayaquil, Ecuador.
Sí, muy buenos días. Mi pregunta es,
My question is,
si se sabe que debemos tener gente de
if
calidad
we know that we
para
ought to
lograr
have
calidad,
quality people to attain
conjugamos
quality,
esta variable
how
con
can
la
we
visión de la empresa?
put this variable along
Pues,
with the
no hemos
vision of the
escuchado
organization?
nada
Because
hablar
we
acerca del
haven't yet heard
conocimiento
anything
de
about
nuestros empleados.
our knowledge of
Y
our
si la visión es
employees.
más global
And if the
para
vision
toda la
is a
empresa,
more
tal vez no
global
tenga
one
resultados
for the
óptimos.
whole enterprise,
¿Qué
in
tan
case we
importante es
don't
poder
get good
compararlo con la
results,
misión?
how important is that
Gracias.
we replace that with our mission?
Okay. As we think about the vision is sort of that combination again of our core beliefs, what is most important to us, and how we intend to behave and live. Secondly, the purpose, which is our guiding star, something that we quite never achieve, but is always in front of us and leading us. And so, no matter what the resource we have is within the business, without having a focal point, the resource that we do have becomes dissipated. And so as we think about the capabilities of the people, they actually who we bring into the business or what capabilities we look for, the vision helps us decide which capabilities we need within the business and the type of resource that we want to engage or hire. And so actually it becomes a driver of the people that we're looking for. Now with respect to the second part of the question is that if we have a vision articulated and with the resources that we have we are not attaining that vision, it allows us to then look at diagnostically those characteristics or those elements which are not permitting us to achieve the vision. The vision is still important because it becomes the guide. It gives us the bench from which we can make these other decisions. And so if we actually have to change some of the personnel to achieve the vision, we can do that in a way that respects our core values and beliefs and treat people with care and get others to replace them. But the vision still is the overriding factor which allows you to make those decisions.
Thank you. Our next question is from la Universidad Tecnológico de Nezahualcóyotl en el Estado de México.
Así es. Mire, señorita, estamos partiendo
We
en la conferencia.
are,
Bueno,
yes,
Bueno,
adelante, buenos días.
estamos partiendo en la conferencia de las organizaciones.
We
que
are talking about organizations that are already established and the aspects that they have to take into account for a better organization. My question would be, what happens with the small entrepreneurs? What tips can we give them to motivate them to generate this new enterprise given the competition out there in the market?
As you think of competition in the marketplace, it even becomes more important for vision to be articulated and to be clear. No matter how small of an organization you are or how big an organization you wish to become, even though you're starting small. Because the decisions that you make, any strategies that you decide to take within the local marketplace or within the community marketplace or the larger marketplace will actually be driven by what it is you're trying to accomplish and the guiding star. And so while the principles seem like they could be onerous because there's four of them, the question still remains, do we or can we bring to consciousness in a very brief way a clear understanding of those principles? They apply to whether or not it's a one-person organization, a 10-person organization, or a 1,000 or 10,000 person organization. The principles are the same.
Thank you very much. We have several calls yet to take, and so we're going to try to go as quickly as we can. The next call is from La Universidad del Caribe en Santo Domingo en la República Dominicana.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
¿Cuáles son los indicadores
What are the indicators through which the market, as an interlocutor market, can recognize excellence and success of an organization from a perspective point of view?
Okay, so as we look at becoming an excellent or a great company, there are a couple of factors. One is, what is the marketplace or what are the customers telling us? And clearly the customer is telling us by what they buy, as well as what our employees are telling us. So the two key resources, or the two key sources of knowledge around whether or not we're being effective are those two. So I would highly encourage getting feedback from those two constituencies.
Thank you. Our next question is from el Instituto Universidad Empresa, la Universidad Blas Pascal, en la provincia de Córdoba, en la Argentina.
Bien, deseamos preguntar
Our question is the following. Does an organization require a certain kind of management style or distribution of power in order to have a definition of visioning be effective?
Mr. Emery, would you like to add something?
The distribution of power is not always titular power. In other words, our experience is that in any organization there are people who have real power, who may not necessarily have the title indicating that they have power, but they are able to influence people and get things done. Our experience and our practice is that to develop a powerful culture driven by a powerful vision, you have to get about 20% of the people in the organization, the people who are influencers, the people who other people listen to, engaged in the project. In the best light, of course, we hope that that's the most senior people. In our discussions also, I've heard people say, well, I have a very small business. That's been in the questions. How do I do this? Who do I engage? Our experience is that you can engage your prospective customers. If we start a very small business, we have a vision one day of a large business. The moment we start, our organization is bigger than just ourselves, because our organization must include conceptually in our minds our customers, and we can engage them in being part of our vision also, which will make them stronger customers.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a question from San Jose, Costa Rica.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
La pregunta es la siguiente.
The question is the following. Among small enterprises, technological, high-tech companies, wouldn't it be good to have a shared vision before having an organizational vision and to establish and define a vision? If we do that, how long would it take if you take into account all the different aspects of the process you have mentioned? Thank you.
Mr. Emery.
Well, how long? One of the great things about being an entrepreneur and starting an organization is that you can, from the very beginning, design the culture. It's much easier to create a culture and a vision and articulate a set of values from the beginning than it is to change a culture, reintroduce or articulate a set of values, and develop and get people engaged in a vision in an organization that has been going in some other direction for a very long time. So if you're starting an organization, you start from the beginning, and how much time it takes rolls out. If it's an established organization, then introducing values, redesigning and developing the culture, getting people engaged in a vision, that can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. When the global company General Electric elected to redevelop their culture, it actually took them, they say, 8 years.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a question from La Universidad Central de Venezuela en Caracas, Venezuela.
Mucho ruido, mucho ruido. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to our organization. The question is the following. How can you visualize if in the future, if the Latin American organizations, how you see the Latin American organizations in a global context, particularly as far as the formation, the establishing of micro enterprises and those who are developing?
Mr. Hoffmann.
Actually, I think Latin America has a very bright future and has a great asset to be able to develop what you're talking about, the ability to create small businesses that in fact can link with the larger world. I believe that the resource that as the developed nations are looking around the world for resource and access to the type of information or product that they need, that again Latin America is ripe for that type of activity. I would also suggest that access to and getting your name out to the world is important. And I would suggest that, once again, the Internet is a very quick way of doing that today. I would also encourage that as you think of your vision, the vision doesn't necessarily have to be that you're immediately global, but the vision would be positioning you, your product, or whatever you're doing in a way that is going to engage the people that are there, but also attract customers and other businesses to look at you.
Thank you very much. Our last question for this first session is from el Instituto Tecnológico de Celaya, en Celaya, en el estado de Guanajuato, en México.
Buenos días. Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Dr. Toño Rocha.
I am Dr. Toño Rocha, and my question is the following. It has to do with the vision and the mission. I am a bit confused. I would like you to clarify the relationship between vision and mission, and which one of the two would go first. Thank you.
Okay. I chose to present the vision this time based on the research that was done by Jim Collins and Ed Porras. And what they've discovered as they were looking at businesses, particularly in the United States, but they researched elsewhere, what companies were great companies. They discovered that as opposed to having a vision and a mission which seemed to confuse people, they discovered that there were some components of what they would then call vision. And the components, as I suggested, were first, what are the core values and beliefs, what's most important. Second, a clear purpose, which is very short and becomes that guiding star. Third was the mission. The mission is something that is generally considered in the 3 to 15 year time frame. So what is it that we're going to do and achieve in the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years? Whereas a vision is the purpose will be much longer. Putting those components together and articulating them in a way that engages what's called the tangible image. Those 4 pieces are what Collins and Porras would say are the vision. And so vision in and of itself isn't just something, it's actually these 4 components tied together. And so I wouldn't say that mission or vision is most important. The 4 components have to be in place to engage the organization, and each one of them plays a role.
Let us begin now with Module 2, in which Mr. Emery will explain how results are the product of intention and mechanisms.
Thank you. Tom Hoffmann has spent time with you exploring the elements of vision. And the challenge becomes how to actualize a vision. The word actualize literally means to make real through action. Most of us who possess an entrepreneurial spirit love to get to the action part. In fact, some of us may qualify as action junkies because we are addicted to taking action. For the purposes of this discussion, we will define success as actualizing our vision. In other words, we have had our dream come true, and we've enjoyed the journey. I would like to explore with you the idea that the context in which we take action is as important as the action itself. There is an old saying from the 60s that goes, "It's not just what you do, it's where you're coming from that counts." As old saying go, this one has the added advantage of being true. Let's begin with a formula that Tom Hoffmann introduced during an earlier broadcast. Results equal intention multiplied by mechanisms. Notice on the right side of the equation, we have a multiplier. Thus, if we want the result to be 100, then we need an intention of 10 multiplied by mechanisms of 10. Included under the heading of mechanisms are business processes and people processes. Mechanisms are a domain of management. We think of process as being the implementation servant of intention. Through high-quality process, we apply the assets of our enterprise to the available opportunities so that our vision becomes a reality. The question now becomes, where does good process come from? In an attempt to answer this question, we return to the equation and focus our attention on the matter of intention. In the English language, the word intention possesses a complexity of meaning. In this equation, we use the word intention in two primary meanings. One, the act or fact of intending, the determination to do a specified thing or act in a specified manner. And two, the aim or purpose of a specific act or acts. Intention is a domain of leadership. Excellent leadership is much less abundant resource than good management. In fact, we can reasonably make the assertion that we live in a world that is overmanaged and underled. Bill Gates of Microsoft was recently listed as the richest man in the world. Implicit in this fact is another fact. The nature of wealth creation has changed. Not too long ago, wealth creation was dependent on the ownership or control of land and natural resources. After the conclusion of the Second World War, wealth creation became a function of the ownership or control of manufacturing capacity. The rise of Bill Gates to the rank of the richest man in the world announces a new era in wealth creation. Wealth creation is now the domain of applied intelligence. If we accept that this is true, and it is, The challenges of leadership require our urgent attention. In a world where the creation of economic value is dependent on applied human intelligence, our most valuable and priceless asset is people. Over the years, we've gotten pretty good at extracting value from natural resources. We've also gotten pretty good at manufacturing. What we are not very good at is the managing of the imagination, creativity, and spirit of people. Notice now that on the graphic, under the word intention, we've added some words that are closely associated with the word intention. The words are commitment, determination, spirit, will, enthusiasm, creativity, and imagination. The challenge: how do we lead and manage the intention, commitment, determination, spirit, will, enthusiasm, creativity, and imagination of people? The solution to the challenge is not to be found in management techniques and formulas. Management techniques and formulas belong under the heading of mechanisms in our equation, which is not to trivialize their role. It is simply to recognize that they are not the tools of leadership.